I'm very grateful to Dr. Juan Bisquet, who agreed to provide this training session online. Juan, Dr. Bisquet is a full professor at the Jaume I University in Castellón. He's a renowned investigator in the world of applied physics, particularly in solar energy devices. He's also the director of the Institute of Advanced Materials, also in Castellón. And the major reason that we've invited him for this session today is because he's been senior editor for many years of the Journal of Physical Chemistry Letters, which forms part of the American Chemical Society publishing world. And I had the pleasure to participate with Juan in a session that was sponsored by the ACS in Madrid last year. And it was really great fun for young scientists to have this information from somebody who's so well connected and so up to date in the publishing world. So Juan, thanks once again for agreeing to do this today. For those of you who don't know Dr. Bisquet, it's unfortunate that we have to use this online format because in person he's great fun, very entertaining, and very dynamic with the audience. So Juan, thanks once again for agreeing to do this experiment today and for sharing your experience with us.
Thank you, Deborah. Yeah.
And I don't know whether you're going to do it in English or Castellano or Valenciano. I think that we agreed to do it in English.
Yes, so I can do it in English. També parlem valencià molt a gust perquè soc de Dènia, whatever. I will do it in English, okay? In case some people don't understand the Valencian.
Welcome.
So, thank you. It's a pleasure to speak here. And this talk is about scientific publication, because I have now a lot of experience, because I published many papers, and I was an editor. I like a lot the publication, but of course, when I began, I had to first send some papers, and I was quite shy about it because it's a process which is a complex world, and I would like to communicate my understanding of this world to the people that is interested to make scientific papers. So the first question is that...
Would you let me add one important piece of data to your introduction, which I forgot to mention, because this is very impressive. Juan Bisquet is one of the most highly cited scientists in the world, and one of the top 3 most cited scientists in Spain, something like that.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Sorry. Yes, I did a lot of work. Okay, thank you. So what you sometimes the people beginning research have the idea of finding scientific results is important, but this is only half part of it, because science is a shared knowledge. It's a knowledge that must be agreed, must be public, must be available to the others. So you have to convert your discovery and your work into something that is known by everyone and understood and used and respected. And this is the process of publication in a sense. So you make scientific work, but you want to have it go to the world. So for scientists, it's very important to communicate, first of all, because you have to make science advance. You have to know your results known to the community and in general to the world. By communication, you build relationship, which is central today, is the teamwork, and also because you make a reputation, and from the reputation you build your career. Publication of scientific communication will be your curriculum will be used to give you grants or positions, etc. So it's very important to publish in order to make your career. It's essential so the people wants to publish and wants that the papers become read and cited and used to have an impact of science and to have your personal benefit. This is the truth, that the scientists fight for their own well-being, apart from finding the knowledge for humanity and all these things. Yeah. So the journal paper is the main shape. There are many ways you can go to a conference and explain, you can do seminars, you can do a lot of things to spread your work, but in the end you have to publish a paper, because a paper is the established way to go into the consensus of science, of the public knowledge that makes science. And a paper stays there and it has all the details, can be read by other people, can be criticized, can be referenced, etc. So today we talk a lot about the journal paper. So a paper is an organized description of hypotheses, data, conclusions, and it's information that you pass to the reader. Okay, it's not just a report about your data. It has to make an effect on the. So a lot of the papers are never read because the scientific literature is very big. A lot of things go into the form of a paper, and you cannot believe this will be read or used or appreciated. So you have to learn effective communication to obtain scientific success, and this is very difficult because you compete against a very big sea of information and competing results. So it is important that early in your scientific work, you think that you will have to publish. So the plan of scientific research, following a question, must be accompanied by the plan of communicating this research, so that research and publication are not separated. They are closely linked and work in parallel. So you must think how your research will take the form of a paper as you are doing it, how you are going to frame your results into something that the others can understand. This is very good for organizing your research. And when you do have a good outline of a paper, this is also a good outline for the research program. So in practice, to publish, you have to submit the article to journal. There is a peer review system. Reviewers make an anonymous critique of your paper. And then in the editorial, there are procedures to get a decision. And then when the paper is published, you have to obtain diffusion of the paper so that the paper is effectively read. So the main responsibles for scientific publication are the big scientific publishers. So you have ACS Publication, American Institute of Physics, you have Elsevier, the Royal Society of Chemistry, you have Nature, you have Wiley, very big houses that have hundreds, thousands of journals, and they care. And there are many types of journals. There are very broad journals, they are very specific, and you have to know which are the important journals for your field in order to select which journal to send your paper. And nowadays, there is also a very big discussion because journals are for subscription, but now there is also the open access option in which the author pays for the editorial cost of a paper. And nobody knows the editorial cost for sure, but the editorial cost will vary from 2,000 euros, and Nature is going to charge some 10,000 euros. So this is what is estimated the editorial cost. So it's now a decision you have to take, whether to pay yourself for the paper and make it open access or send it to a journal that is by subscription. Because now I want to go into how do we follow scientific papers? So first of all, the paper has a structure with the title, the authors, the introduction. Then there are parts that go outside of the paper and they generate the first attention of the papers, the abstract and the table of contents, the citation of the paper. The figures are extremely important for reading and for communicating information. And then the conclusion is also a very important part of the paper. And then there are detailed information of how to reproduce the results. To be scientific, it has to be able to another team to reproduce it. So this is the general structure of the paper. And of course, finally, the reference where you want to be cited by the papers that in the future work in your topic. This is all very important. So the question is, you have to get informed and you have to know what is important and how to read papers. How to read papers is a very important topic because what can you read among the thousands of things that are published? How deeply should you read? How do you want to read a paper? Because a paper is long, has a lot of parts, and how to analyze and structure your thoughts about a paper. So there was recently in Science a set of opinions, and I will explain some of this opinion by different expert scientists. So this one says I read the abstract, then I go through the figures. So the figures in scientific papers are very important because they must tell a story. Each figure must give rapidly some information and then go to the conclusion. Now, from this first scan, you might see if you have interest to read more or not. So abstract and conclusion are critical. This is also from the point of view of editor that I select which papers are going to the editorial process. This is essential also. Abstract, figures, and conclusion. The next person explains that at the beginning of your career it's difficult to reading is slow, but then you get a mental library and methods to. This other person is saying, I read the abstract, and if I'm interested, then I continue. Then depends on whether the you know already the topic or not. If you know about the topic of the paper, you go to the conclusions, which gives the main information that paper contains. Then look at the figures table, obtain the information. But if you don't know the topic, then you can read the introduction to learn what is it about this new field. Okay. And then, of course, you select papers according to your research interest. You select papers of your research topic and sometimes other things to know what is going on about science. And then the introduction is very useful because it will tell you the reasons that the people has for doing such research. Okay, so now I will go to how to write the scientific paper. Okay, you see my presentation now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so the process of writing has a structure in general. You have initial ideas, then drafting, revising, editing, publishing. This is in general writing, preparing something for publication. It's a long process, it's a complex process and has many steps. So for preparing your publication, here is the notes of the ACS on campus. The first thing is tell a story, is to give a structure that the other people will follow, is to provide a narrative to the paper. Also, the graphics are very important. Revising, editing, modifying, checking, remaking the work. This is extremely important. A paper goes through many layers of revisions until it gets the final structure and shape. And there are things that are seen from outside, the things that call the attention of the people, title, abstract, conclusions. This must be very well written and you must work especially on it because this is what will bring readers to continue reading your paper. So writing is a craft. So the main thing is that you read a lot, and you pay you have an eye to the how the good writers make the paper. So I will explain some ideas about what makes a good paper. The first thing is that in scientific writing, you not only give information, but you want to convince the others that this is good and significant information. So it's persuasion. The result not only has meaning, it's not something you have to say, but it's meaningful, it's important for the others. The others have to adopt it. This is in the end the aim of scientific communication. You have to convince the others. Of course, giving scientific reasons and a good story. The story is essential because if you want to keep the reader's attention, you have to give them a good structure of reading. And this is what we tell a story that will generate, for example, curiosity by normally you start saying why there is a gap in knowledge that you want to fill. This might be not how you started to do the research. So it has nothing, there is no connection in reality of how you did the research and how you present it. You are able to frame a new story when you present it, provided that the scientific content is true and is right, of course. But it's not a report of what happened. So that you have to frame a convincing story. And not a set of fragmented informations. So you have to follow one topic and give structure. Structure is essential. So why is scientific writing storytelling? Because in a paper, you have a structure and you must say, what did you and your team do? Why did you do it? How did you do it? What did you find and what does it mean? In the end, a very well presented paper will contain all this. It's a narrative, it's a story, but it's also providing the information in a way that is pleasant to read and is systematic and is complete. Structure is essential, and the structure, in my opinion, as a writer, is the most difficult thing to do. The structure is the final product that you will give to the reader, and it is not related to the way you did your research or the way you started to decide to present your research. So the structure goes transformation, because when you start making versions of the papers, you see how the things fit with each other in order to make a very good whole. And this is structure, and structure is essential. And you must be ready to change the structure of a paper if you think of a better one. Although it's a lot of work, but in the end, you have to publish a good paper. Editing is very important because, of course, you go by different layers of editing, checking, confirming, reworking, rewriting, and this is very important. So you have to give space. You make your paper and get a little distance from it. Of course, pass it through collaborators. Everyone must collaborate to make a good paper. It's much better done in a team, and if everyone is positively contributing to improve the paper at each layer of edition. And cut. Don't tell everything you want to say, because the dominant argument is structure, not the variety of contents, so that you don't have to say everything you want to say, but the things that are good for the structure of the paper. Graphics are essential. You have to learn graphics. Graphics must tell a story of themselves, be highly ordered, be modern, look very good. This is very important. And there are then the parts already mentioned, the title, the abstracts. This goes into the databases. This is into the general diffusion of your paper. Also, the table of contents is very good. So especially the title is extremely difficult to make a good title of your paper, because in one sentence you have to condense the information of your work, and you also have to make the people want to read your paper without sounding exaggerated, so that finding a title is it's a very important craft, and you have to work a lot and get good examples when you read. Look at the title; it looks natural, but there's a lot of work after good titles. Write well the abstract, learn the criteria for writing abstracts, and work on it. Normally at the end of the paper, but if there is a team, normally nobody wants to write the abstract. So somebody has to do it. So you take the responsibility, write an abstract early on when the paper is finished, and then you will have a good abstract. And this table of content graphics now is a very important thing. So I go now into the process of publication. You choose, this is my journal where I am an editor. As an example, you choose a journal and send the paper to the journal. And in the journal, there is a set of editors, and they will be, one editor will be responsible for the process of peer review. But first, there is a pre-screening because the journals don't take all the papers that go there. The journals make a choice of the papers. It can be 50% or it can be 5%. But your first task is that the editors find the paper good for the journal. And the cover letter is very important here. Of course, you have to go to a journal that is a good level and then write a good cover letter, because then the editor can be convinced that the cover letter is something you write for the editor. And then you convince the editor that this is new, is adequate to the journal, etc. And then your paper will go into peer review. Peer review is that the editor sends the paper to anonymous referees or reviewers. And these people will send back an opinion with arguments, with questions about your paper. And this will be the base of the editor for taking a decision about the paper. So then the editor looks at the opinions of the reviewers and then can accept the paper. Normally, ask for a revision. That is, the paper goes back to the author with the opinions of the reviewer, and the author must answer these questions and modify the paper, and then the paper becomes much better. So this is the magic of the scientific publication paper, that in the peer review, you discuss with experts, anonymous, and your paper improves. The paper can be rejected also if the referees didn't like your paper or think it's wrong or something, then the editor can reject it. Or the paper can be transferred. Now, this is something new in the last years, is that you went to a very good journal, but you don't have good critiques, then the paper goes to a lower category journal according to impact factor or something. So this is the transfer process, because now the editorials try not to lose papers, try to keep the papers into the family of the editorial. So this is the overall process of the publication. So you submit to the journal, it goes to the editor, it goes to reviewers and come back, maybe several times, and then the editor takes a decision. Reject the paper goes back to you. Then, of course, you can go to another journal, because there are many journals now. If the paper is not totally convincing, the editor will transfer your paper to another journal. Or if the review process was good, then the paper is accepted, and then it will be published, and you have a paper, and then starts the process of making diffusion or making this content of the paper. You can make diffusion in Twitter, take it to conferences, etc., so that the people knows that you published this paper. So the cover letter is quite important. As I said, you must say why it's new, what is important, and why it's appropriate to this journal. The selection of peer reviewers is made by the editor. So that what I do is to find the best experts as I can. And now there is also a recommendation. The author gives a recommendation. And this is very important, because many authors give a good recommendation. A good recommendation means that you should not you should not put your friends, collaborator, people with a conflict of interest, and then these people can be used as reviewers. So my advice is they should be people not very close to yourself, not your direct collaborators, because this is obvious to the editor and will not use the list, and not put the very, very famous scientists, because these people is very busy. So you try to find intermediate level scientists that will take the paper for review. So this is what I see as an editor. This is reviewer decisions. So this one, for example, is saying the paper is publishable, but needs a major revision. And then it's asking a set of reasons that should be improved, the paper. This is another one, the same thing. It's giving a recommendation. Okay, it's in favor of publication, but first the author will have to answer these questions or solve these problems. This one means that the referee don't want to see again. The answer is okay, but puts a lot of questions and explanation of how to improve the paper. So this is what a good reviewer must do. Must make a deep analysis, provide a clear recommendation, and make a set of questions very clear so that the authors can see how to improve the paper, either if the recommendation is positive or not. Even if you are going to reject the paper, it's good that you give the author the reasons why they should improve the paper. So when you get this reviewer comment, you must read these questions and try to answer them. If there are new experiments, new measurements, take the time. Don't just answer with words. This is not nice. If the reviewers have made a critique that you need more experiments, more measurement, then take the time to do it. And because it means that the paper will be much better and the reasoning will be stronger. So, and then you have to reply to each of the comments. This is one example of response letter, which is very good. It puts in blue the question of the reviewer, and then in another color the response of the author. And here is saying action taken. Okay, it's the response, all the argument about this question, and then what have you done? How have you modified the paper? What new information, new graphic, etc.? This is a very clear letter for the editor. If I see this very clear response, then I will basically publish the paper because I know they have responded everything very well. And if the manuscript is declined or rejected, then it's better to go to another. Sometimes you can appeal to the editor because you think the review is not fair, but appealing is not good from the editorial point of view because it creates a lot of trouble. So my recommendation is that it's better, unless there is a major error in the review process, it's better that you go to another journal. There are many journals. You improve the paper, don't send the paper without making the review modification, and go to another journal. So how to select journals? So there are different metrics for the journals that you must take into account: how long they take to respond, what is the geographic distribution of the journal, and what is the impact. The impact is an assessment of the importance of the paper, of the journal, not the paper, the journal, normally based on citation that the journal receives. And the impact is very important because it's used in academic evaluation. So if you have papers in very highly valued journals, then it will influence your obtaining more projects, contracts, etc. So the role of journals in science is not only to communicate or transmit the information. The journals also distribute prestige. And this is a very complex topic that cannot be changed so easily by saying that everything should be open, etc. Because after the review process is very selective, and some journals select more than others, and some journals are read more than others. So all this evaluation of the papers is giving the prestige to your curriculum, although it has some malfunctioning also, but this is the reality. So the impact by citation is the dominant criterion today. It's called the impact factor, and it's calculated by the total number of citations of the journals divided by the total number of papers published by the journals in 2 years. So this number now is very important, because if you, for example, have an evaluation of the institute, you will have to show that you have a lot of papers in high impact factor, but it also has a lot of problems, because 2 years is not such a long time to see the effect of a scientific contribution. So there's a lot of criticism about the impact factor, but this is the reality, that the impact factor is now a highly dominant number, and you want to have some paper with high impact factor in your curriculum. So there are different criteria. It's not only the impact factor. So in your field, there will be some journals that are used by the scientists, and then is the rating, but the quality of editorial processes, the rapidity, the quality of the reviewers in the journal. There are many aspects to evaluate the journals, not only one, and you have to understand these things when you become a practicing scientist. So the journal paper, in summary, is the central type of communication, and you have to control a series of informations to balance how to make a decision where to send your paper, and this is a very important part of the work. So now I will finish with a series of critical discussion, which are my opinion, and I think it's also useful to have a discussion about these points. The first is an ethical consideration in submission. This is not a critical point. This is a very important points that all authors must contribute to the work. Avoiding plagiarism and self-plagiarism, this is totally forbidden now. Don't repeat, don't copy and paste. You cannot do that. Every paper must be an original contribution of scientific information. You submit only one paper to one journal until the editorial process finishes, because it's published or rejected. And I think it's also important to make papers. Okay, there are 2 types of paper: very short communications like letters, and papers that are longer. So I think it's good to make papers that have all aspects of one question, and not always divide a type of scientific result into smaller parts in order to make more papers. But of course, today there are many papers out there, and the short communication is coming more and more, because the people cannot read everything. So that I will also favor short communication of a single point, but then I also like the broad review of a topic that you take some years to make and gives a very consistent and complete research work. So science now is in big fashion in the COVID, also in discussion about the predominance of fake news in the public discussion. So science has a very positive outlook, and science is establishing knowledge. So what we have is a method of discussion to establish the good knowledge, and the process of peer review is central to it, because it establishes a scientific publication, which is part of the scientific consensus. So science is a method not only of research, it's also a method of social behavior to select the knowledge that is accepted. But from inside, we must recognize that there are some other aspects. So science is research driven by curiosity. And what is true is that the scientists want to be highly independent because they want to do whatever they want. At the same time, they need money and resources and people to do this. Otherwise, if you don't have resources, you cannot do high-level science. So that, as I explained before, a paper turns the main point of a paper, a scientific paper, is to turn data and calculations into knowledge, but at the same time, it creates a personal benefit. You give knowledge to the work and you get a personal benefit because the paper gives you credit, scientific credit, and gives you funding. So there's a circle here I saw in title. You can see at the right part of the slide. This that you publish to get funding, and you get funding to make more papers. And this is the cycle of the very big and important team. Scientists is publishing, and getting money. And sometimes the people don't stop to see what is the purpose of all this because you just want to improve your influence. So you have to be careful and analyze your people around you and the mentors. It's very important that science today is done as a team because there is stories about the big scientist as a lone person, normally men, and today it doesn't work this way. So the scientific prizes sometimes must be counterproductive. They don't favor the work of the team, especially the Nobel Prize, because in Nobel Prizes, like in the case recently, a lot of people contributed to that. And in the end, it goes to 3 persons. So there are other 9 persons that made very important contributions that didn't get anything. So you have more frustration. So some people become superstars and others don't get anything. So science is sometimes highly frustrating because in the end, and this narrative of excellence, some people get it all. So you have to be careful and understand these ways of science because science is a lot about distribution of prestige, and prestige is not fair many times. It doesn't mean that the people that got the Nobel Prize didn't do it. They are very important, but there are others also. And the collaborative work of science is essential, I think. And this goes to the publication of high-profile papers. And this is a statement of Lee Cronin that in the scientific literature, of course, I told that you have to make a narrative about a big discovery, and this can be sometimes manufactured about very little results by people that have the skills to write very well, which is not easy at all. So that discovery and narrative sometimes puts us in a difficult situation because sometimes the very big papers, you don't know which is the significance until time passes and there is a wider scientific discussion. So that, of course, everyone wants to publish in Nature, Science, etc. This is the highest reputation. And if you do that, you obtain credibility and you have prestige, etc. But it's not easy to go into these journals. Sometimes the journals are very picky because they choose papers that they know will have a high impact. So it's a vicious circle. And sometimes they choose the papers according to the preceding credential of the authors. So I think that some people made their career also not in Nature side, but also in medium journals that are very good valued, and these scientific results will also have high influence and impact. Another topic is which topic of research you choose, because of course you want to publish. And if you take a very hot topic, it will be easier to publish in high prestige journals. But if everybody works in the same topics, then science will be much narrow and there will be less. Some people has to take also more original things. So this is a difficult point because, of course, it's easier to publish very good papers if you are on the wagon of something that is everybody else is doing. But sometimes I admire a lot the people that follows an idea. For example, this guy won 2 Nobel Prizes and he published very few papers because he published a paper when he had very good results. And today he wouldn't have funding and he wouldn't have high contracts because he didn't make so many papers. So I really respect the people that make science based on solving a problem. So some people becomes concentrated in a problem, they want to solve it, and this is people that brings finally a lot of new knowledge and a lot of interpretation. So this is all about my talk. So thank you, and I will be glad to have some discussion with anyone interested.